Hi, thanks for joining us for this episode of Doug Has Questions. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please like, subscribe. We're available if you want to watch us on YouTube, or if you just want to listen to the podcast version on Apple Podcast and Spotify. And each episode goes live on Thursday morning. So I hope you enjoy this episode, and we're happy to have you listening. Welcome to this episode of Doug Has Questions. Today my guest is Dr. Marnie Hartman, physical therapist, yoga instructor, strength instructor, author, many other talents that we're going to hear about. Marnie has been a big factor in my life as far as pain management and as a yoga instructor and also as a friend, and look forward to diving into her life story and some of the things she's done beyond what I know that she's been doing in this. But I think like I told you when I asked you to be on here, Marnie, you have such a compassionate, outgoing personality that the things that I know about you, they're all about helping other people get through, whether it's pain, grief, a lot of things, just trying to bring out the best in people. And I appreciate that about you, and I want to share that story with everybody else. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me. It's really an honor to be here.
Well, thank you. Mm-hmm. So let's start with early Marnie. Where'd you grow up? What was your childhood like?
I was a military brat.
Okay.
So I was born in the Philippines, and we moved around quite a lot until I was about 8 years old. And then we spent a big chunk of my, adolescent teen until I moved here was in Southern California.
So the different places you went to so it's obviously 8 years old, there's some of them you probably don't have much of a memory of, but were there any places that you're like, wow, that was really cool, that was a neat experience?
Yeah, North Dakota.
Okay.
I spent a fair bit of time in North Dakota, which I think some people think I have a bit of an accent, and I think it comes from that, kind of Scandinavian.
Were you out of Minot then?
Grand Forks.
Grand Forks.
Mm-hmm. My dad was in the Air Force.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think that's maybe where I first really felt connected to nature. I mean, I was young, but, when I think back to fun childhood memories, it was going to this place called Turtle River and, camping out and things like that. And it felt like some of that shed away when we moved to California, just less access to what I think of as the wild. Of course, there were the beaches and, things like that were beautiful and fun, but not as much remote.
Until you said it was Southern California? Mm-hmm. L.A., San Diego, where?
Riverside, which
Riverside?
is,
okay.
The Inland Empire.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Some people call it the armpit.
I have heard that phrase to describe it before.
I do have great memories of citrus groves. I often say the one thing that is, maybe a little better about California than Haynes, Alaska is the smell of springtime, because it smells like orange blossoms rather than dog poop.
That is a big improvement. I would agree. And I've always been jealous when I've either traveled to Southern California or like friends in Arizona, the fresh citrus in their backyards. They got lemon trees, orange trees, whatever in their backyards. And it's like, oh, that would be nice.
Yeah, it is nice.
Not to discount our blueberries and all the berries and stuff we get here, but it's sometimes you yearn for that thing you don't have.
Exactly.
And see that. Mm-hmm. So growing up in Southern California, what were your activities? Were you going to the beach quite a bit, doing a lot of swimming?
I went to the beach a lot and played in the waves. I did a lot of boogie boarding and, beach sand volleyball. But I was a gymnast through most of my older adolescence and teen high school years. And so I spent a lot of time indoors in the gym. In fact, my gymnastics coach always made a joke, if we, went away for the weekend and came back and were a little tan, he'd be like, "You're too tan to be a gymnast."
Oh, wow.
Just in that you're spending more time outside than inside. It was kind of a funny little joke, but.
What did you enjoy most about gymnastics?
I think I have, at least that I was really attracted, and it's kind of stayed with me, those sports that feel like it's a team environment, but the actual physical performance of it all is on you. The person that I'm really competing with is myself on how, can I do better than I did last time? And that better isn't impacted by how anybody else on our team performs. So I think I was always somebody who felt more comfortable in that environment than in like that real like competitive, the team sport of like taking things away from somebody else, or, even like racing to a finish line. I'm the one who's going to, like, in the bike races I've participated in here, like I'll ride with somebody for a long time, and right when we get to the finish line, I'll just pull back and let them have it. And it's not like ooh, I let them have it, but it's just naturally that like I don't have that like I have to do better than you. And so I think in gymnastics it was, really always about bettering your own performance. And I like the precision sports. I really like, finding those nuances of body mechanics and positioning to change how something comes out, instead of like the more like aggressive, thrill-seeking. I mean, gymnastics has some thrill to it, of course, but it's different.
So you're at high school level. Mm-hmm. Were you on any traveling teams, anything like that as well, or just to the high school level?
Mm-hmm. At least in Southern California, gymnastics is no longer part of a school sport because the insurance, the risk of injury is too high. And so I was in a club team, and we traveled, all over the state, the region a little bit. And I did apply to compete for college. But I knew pretty early, like I knew as a senior in high school that I wanted to be a physical therapist. And I knew it was a rather competitive program to get into, at least in Southern California. And I was not a super strong academic individual. I struggled through high school. I struggled from the time something many people wouldn't know about me maybe or think is when I was in first and second grade, I was a kid that like got pulled out of class because I was a slow reader. And so I was, taken to Mrs. Wise's class and, individually had individual sessions to help me read. At that time, I didn't know that it was something unusual. That didn't come really into my awareness until I started working in the school as a physical therapist and was like, oh, like kids have IEPs and, that is likely what I had. So anyway, all that to say, I knew that I would have to work really hard in my first few years of college to be able to get into a physical therapy program. And I didn't think I could do both.
Okay, we're going to come back to that because we're going to take a detour here.
Okay.
While you mentioned that, I think it's amazing that a young girl that had help in first and second grade with reading became an author.
Yeah.
I think it's just so many people that I've met, it's always really cool for me. They probably didn't understand the struggles, but when you see the things that people struggle with and then the way that they can overcome them and the things that they do with that, with perseverance, support from family, friends, whatever, and I think it's a great thing to show to other people that we're never a finished product.
No.
And this is kind of this is one of the things I've always taken away from yoga class with you. You were always telling me, just be good with where you are today. It might be better than yesterday, might be worse than yesterday. Tomorrow might be better, tomorrow might be worse, but you're in today. Make the best of that. Just enjoy what you have. And I think moving forward with that is just recognizing that we're not the finished product, that we can be better tomorrow, that we can be even better the next day. It just depends if you want to be there and putting some time into it. But I think that's amazing that you have that experience as a young child and became an author.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a terrible speller.
Doesn't matter. They got spell check.
Exactly.
They've got editors. They got people that help with that.
Exactly.
You don't have to be perfect at it.
Not at all.
You just have to have the knowledge and be willing to put the time in.
Yeah, I do think part of, my young years of moving around a lot also meant that I was in a lot of different schools. I remember real specifically going from second grade in North Dakota to second grade in Kentucky and going from a class of 15 at a private school to a public county school with like a class of 35 and being super lost. in second grade, just going like, wow, they're learning cursive and we hadn't even started or whatever, and so I look back into a lot of my, the way I write, the way I spell, and I just think like those early years, there were a lot of gaps. And you're right, you're not a finished product. You're also not who you once were. Right. And it doesn't,
it's a part of you.
It's a part,
it's not
it's my
it's not
story.
the complete
like,
thing.
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's part of my story, and maybe it's partially, I am kind of stubborn and driven in some ways of like, if somebody had said to me like, oh, well, you had trouble reading, you're never going to be an author. I'm going to be the person that's like, well, maybe I am. Maybe I am.
Maybe I will.
Let's just wait and see.
Just to prove you wrong.
Exactly.
We'll see who gets the last laugh on this one.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think it is a really beautiful point. And I feel like I talk to a lot of the youth that are in my life in that way of like the struggles that you have now. I mean, one of my dear friends will kind of sit with me in this one of like, I often talk about the things that we struggle the most with in life can really become our superpowers, right? If I have because it allows me that insight into compassion, right? Because now I can understand from my lens of a struggle how something else might be harder for someone else. We don't have to have the same struggle for me to then go like, oh, right? Like this is hard for them.
I will agree with that 100%. I think that's something we share. I think that the struggles that I've had in life, it's definitely made me more empathetic to others. And, the different traumatic experiences over time, it kind of gives you that sense of these moments don't have to define you. They're part of who you are, but the way you respond to them, and you can definitely recover from them, but the way that you respond to that and take that in and learn from those experiences, I think is more powerful than the experience itself.
Completely agree.
But sometimes it's hard to tell you that when you're going through those experiences.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so that's why I appreciate you and others that have been on here sharing those experiences, that when they have had those difficulties, because there's a lot of people that don't hear that. And it's only been in the last 5-10 years that there's people that have probably been telling me that, but telling somebody and them hearing it are two different things. And
I really believe that, we receive the lessons in life at the time that we really need them. You can often look back and be like, oh yeah, like that was coming at me and it was coming at me. Why didn't I receive it then? Because it wasn't the right time. Like our teachings come when we need it the most.
I like that. Okay, after that divergence there, let's go back to high school.
Okay, high school.
You were back in high school.
High school, yeah. So, Riverside Poly High.
Where was it?
Riverside, California.
Riverside Poly High.
Yeah, Poly High. We were the Bears.
The Bears.
Yeah,
so
similar.
Very similar there. The thing with me is every time that I've seen when they talk about gymnastics is the amount of hours put in for that. I knew what it was like practicing for basketball, a couple hours a day or whatever, but it seems like gymnastics, figure skating, some of those precision sports like you were talking about, where it's very refined movements. There's a lot of time. What was your daily practice schedule?
We practiced for 3.5 hours a day,
okay.
5 days a week.
5 days a week.
And when I was 14, I started coaching. So I had an open 6th period. I started in my sophomore year of high school. I petitioned to allow my gymnastics to count as PE credit. So that offered me more time outside of school. And then I ended up also doing something called an ROP program, which was regional occupational training. Wouldn't be right. Programming, regional occupational programming, which is how I kind of initially got a window into the physical therapy rehab world, but we can go back to that. And so I also got some credits for coaching. And so that left me with basically 3/4 of a day in school. So I would leave school early, 1:30, I think, ish. I'd go home, have a snack, go to the gym. I would teach preschoolers and what were called our like our fast trackers. So anything from 6 to 10 years old who appeared to have kind of a extra gifted skill. So they were like the tops kids. We were trying to bring in, to the competitive scene a little bit earlier. And then, so I spent 2.5 hours coaching and then 3.5 hours training straight after that. So it was usually about 9-ish o'clock by the time I got home. And I would eat dinner and go directly to bed. This is strange, I'll tell you that. So I would usually be in bed by 10:30, and then I would set my alarm and wake up at like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning and do my homework. And then I would go back to bed for like an hour before I went to school. And it was, probably a ridiculous rationale, but then at least made me feel like I hadn't been up since 4 in the morning because I'd had that little like nap, in the middle. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I spent most of my high school career was spent in the gym.
Wow. That is, so any weekends you had off though, or were there meets on the weekends?
When it was season, we had 2 kind of competitive seasons a year. So in season, then you usually had a competition at least all day, one of the Saturdays or Sundays. And if you were, lucky enough to make it to the next, level, then oftentimes you had to go back the next morning.
Dang.
Yeah.
That was I'm guessing that's where you learned a lot of discipline. Just that you have to keep up that regimen at a young age.
Yeah, definitely discipline. And, like that, the gym crew kind of gave me that like extended family feeling. I spent at that time in my life, I spent more time with my teammates and my coach than I did with my family. And I definitely, it's an interesting thing. Like now looking back, I think that kind of helped to carve in that idea for me of like a chosen family. I love my blood family. Yep. They're really great. And there's a lot of people in my life that I would say that I am, even more like heart close to because it's like they're my chosen family and we have those other kind of big life things in common. And, for me at that time, my gym family was definitely that.
I think it's important to have those teams outside of your family that are with you at different stages in life.
Yeah.
That you have that connection to, that you're sharing similar things, whether it's gymnastics or whatever other life experiences you're going through, that just have other people that are experiencing it with you is a huge part. And that's one of the reasons I've always appreciated athletics is you do have those teammates, those people that are working towards a common goal. Hopefully everybody's working on the same page, not always, but that's crazy. Sorry, no, I'm not saying you're crazy, but you look at that when people think that they don't have enough time to do something.
I definitely think it's it's definitely where I got that, like, I can be maybe to a fault productive, right? Like I don't have a real hard time checking boxes in my life, right? Like some of my friends are like, wow, you got a lot done today. Like, well, I don't know.
Yeah, I think I can get a lot done, but I just wait until 7 to get started.
Well, see, we all have those different times. Yeah.
4 o'clock's a little early.
Yeah. And I took that kind of pattern even into college for a long time. Like the mornings have always been my clear thought process time. And so I think, it kind of stayed with me of like, I wake up and study and focus. And I did a lot of the writing of the book also early in the morning. Mm-hmm.
So you said, as you're going through high school, you said in your senior years when you first became interested in going into physical therapy, was there an event or was it just being around, having injuries yourself? What was that spark that got you going down the physical therapy path?
I mean, I think partially recognizing that like there was obviously a passion to the body and physical movement and that connection to like learning to coach and like being able to communicate with somebody and getting them to shift their body into something else just by certain cues. I think that was a little bit of the intrigue, and also knowing I didn't necessarily want to be a professional coach. And then through that regional occupational programming, I took a class that was about athletic training. So I learned how to like tape ankles and do on-field assessments. And so my senior year, in addition to all the time at the gym, I also spent time with our high school football team. And so I'd go to their practices on the sidelines. I'd go to their Friday night games on the sidelines with my little, hip belt first aid kit and run out there. And in Riverside, California, they had this really cool place called the Sports Clinic. And it was connected with a orthopedic medical office. So there were like 10 orthopedic doctors, surgeons. There were like 15 physical therapists and occupational therapists, all in the same big kind of building complex.
Big complex.
It was big. And then there were also this team of athletic trainers. And they had a really cool setup where any high school or college, there were 2 colleges in Riverside, both a junior college and UC Riverside, the University of California, Riverside. So anybody who was injured during an athletic practice that was school sanctioned, or at one of the games, could come between 6 and 8 in the morning to the sports clinic and get a professional assessment by one of the trainers. They'd got assessed, they could get on, electrical stim and ice, they might get a few little exercises to get them back into play. And so through this...
So that was free?
That was all free.
They did that? Wow.
They did it for free. And, the trainers from there were contracted with the schools to go and be the trainers of, at the games. And so I think there was probably some, agreement to that of like, you get free access if you hire our trainers. I don't know all the ins and outs of that, but
even just as a advertising thing, if you got them in for free and you need to go back recurring, hey, where are we going to go?
Well, I mean, that was the really cool thing about it is that, if you came in for an assessment and it was like, oh, well, you're going to need the next level of care. Here it is. Like, here's the physical therapist you can go see. Yeah. And then beyond that, like, oh, you need something more. Here's the orthopedist that you can see. And then you could work yourself all the way back through, right? So the ortho could send them back to the PT that's in the same office. And then the PT could send them on to the athletic trainer. And then finally they're back out to play.
Back on the field.
So it was a really cool thing to witness and be part of. And I recognized that all the volunteer work that I was doing on the athletic training side, I kept watching the physical therapists. And it was the difference of having, 4 or 5 people in front of you that you were kind of dancing between, of like putting ice on, taping, setting up e-stim, whatever. And I always kind of joke that it was like you just taped them up, smacked them on the butt and said, get out and play, right? Not really what we did, but it kind of felt like that. It was like you're putting a Band-Aid on it to get them back out to play. And the PTs were the ones that were really like having a relationship with these individuals, right? They were going deeper into the diagnostics, to the assessment of what was happening and bringing them around to like actually getting better instead of just like whatever you had to do to get through that game. And it spoke to me. Like, I think I want that side. I want to be able to hear their stories. I want to be able to have more of a relationship. I want to see them, come one step further. And so that sent me into wanting to be a PT. And I'll fast forward just to make the streamline. I ended up going to physical therapy school in Southern California at Loma Linda University. Yeah. And my first job was at the sports clinic.
Sweet.
I went back to work.
Went back right to the... Yeah. Full circle.
Left an impression.
Yeah. So what was it like going through PT school? Knowing, my niece has gone through it and I've talked to other people about it. It can be challenging, to say the least. Did you enjoy it from the start, or were there times that you're like, what was I thinking?
There were definitely times that I was like, what was I thinking? Because remember, like, academics.
Sitting
with a book was not what I was loving in life.
That's why I asked that question, is because there's a lot of that once you got into graduate school, wasn't there?
Yeah. And it's funny because that, like, the belief of, like, teachings come when you need them. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to be a PT. I wanted to be a PTA because of the short schooling.
Okay.
That was my initial, was like, I need to get out of school. I'm not a school person. I don't like sitting with a book. I want to be moving. I want to be here doing this thing. And I guess, looking back now, I'm super thankful. And at the same time, I did my 2 years of undergraduate initially to apply to physical therapy school, which is for a PTA, which is an associate's degree. Mm-hmm. And I didn't get in. And so I was like, oh, well, all right, I guess I just keep going with the prerequisites. And then I got into at that time, it was a master's program. So I got into the master's program, and, to like give a tiny picture of what our first quarter was gross anatomy. So for 8 weeks, 6 hours a day, we did nothing but gross anatomy.
Is that the Cadavers?
That's Cadavers.
Cadavers, yep.
Yep. So it was like 3 hours of didactic where you're, in more of a traditional classroom setting, learning medical terminology and just the straight anatomy. And then 3 hours in the cadaver lab every afternoon, actually putting what you're learning like in front of you. And that did help with me for my learning, is that I think I'm a kinesthetic learner. I'm somebody who, like, moving and doing things and being part of the process gets it in. Just putting it in a book in front of me is like, not that. I'm not big on, I love to read, but trying to teach me something out of a book, forget it. Just show me how to do it. Yeah. I don't like reading, learning something out of a book. Yeah. Drives me crazy. Yeah. Yeah, that's not easy. It's not that great for me either. No. Yeah. So once you get past, like, gross anatomy and everything, you're thinking, okay, this is something besides the schoolwork. Yeah, I mean, I think it was hard. It was all it was all I did. But I also feel like, in hindsight, it doesn't matter. I think, my life in gymnastics helped with that, of the, like, this is what I'm doing. Yes, I'm in college. I'm a late teens, early 20s person. I started PT school when I was 20. And, like, it was all I did. That was when my other friends were joining sororities and, living the college life. I was studying a lot. And I guess what I was asking is, were you like, were there moments that you were like, man, what did I get myself into? Or was it still pretty much, the more you did it, the more you're like, yeah, I'm on the right path. I'm really glad I went down this road. I'll give Loma Linda good credit in that, just the little bit that I know of some of the other programs. Year one, they had us in practicals. So we were already out, at least for short, like 3-week stints where you were in a clinic. Okay. Couldn't do much but observe. But I think that being stuck in the middle of these, it'd be like 3 months of intense study where you're going, why am I doing this? And then you'd get to go to a clinic. And every time I spent time in a clinic or a hospital, wherever I was, it really fed, like, this is what I want to do. Yeah. Once you got that connection with the people, it reinforced that I'm on the right path. Yeah. 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 So you graduate. Yeah. So here's it's kind of an interesting thing that played out, is that, so I was in a 3-year master program, and during my 3rd year, there was all this discussion of the future of academics for physical therapists is moving to a doctoral program. And so my lab partner through the entire time, even in my my prerequisite years, was my friend Travis Harp, and he and I looked at each other and we were like, this this kind of sucks. Like, we just spent all this time, getting a master's degree, and we're going to be out in practice for a year or two, and then everybody's going to have doctorates behind us. Like, we're not the 10-year master person who has 10 years of experience, and like that's going to hold them above. We're kind of stuck in this like no man's land that isn't going to make us very attractive for competitive, positions. So we made a pact that we would go to the dean and ask if we could petition into the doctoral program. And so we did. So basically, our last 2 quarters of the master's program, we added in the doctoral work. So when I was in my last rotations, like my residencies, I was also taking night classes to finish the doctorate. Then we graduate, and we had 1 more year. So we graduated with our master's. We both went to work full time and took night classes with this doctoral program that was going through. So then we ended up graduating with the first round of those doctoral students. And again, it was like intense. And because we were in it, like it felt really nice to me to be working and putting all that stuff that I had been learning, into work, and then just, taking a few extra courses in the evening and doing some more research.
Were you the only 2 in your group that did that? Do you think the rest wish they'd... Did you mention it to anybody else? They're like, nah, we're good with just being a master's.
We didn't... I don't remember if we, asked anybody else to join us. I remember us, having kind of like a handshake agreement of, we're going to go to the dean and ask for this. And we did. And I think most of our friends were like, you guys are crazy.
We're ready to get out of here.
Forget this. And I do know that both Travis and I, I'm very thankful that I did it, because honestly, finishing school, I've never had an inkling really to be like, I want to go back to school.
No, but so to add that extra year right on, I think is definitely, you get out of that, you probably weren't going to be going back.
No, I did do after finishing my doctorate, I had 1 year of a little bit more of a more balanced life of just working, a standard working 40 to 50 hour work week, and then the next year, actually, Travis and I together again took this year-long residency program for orthopedics for manual therapy. So we learned a lot more of osteopathic manipulations, and kind of ended up with this manual specialty at the time in the orthopedic world.
And so when you were doing that residency, was that a full-time residency, or were you working at the clinic still?
Working at the clinic still, and then that happened on the weekends.
Okay. Man, you have a way of packing a lot into everything. You just don't take much time off, do you?
I didn't.
You did not take much time off at all. So so after that residency, you're still at the clinic. How long did you stay at the clinic?
At the sports clinic, I was there for 4.5 years.
4.5 years? And is that when you came to Haynes after that, or was there a step between?
There was a year in between. So there was some change in management at the clinic, and I wasn't real happy with how the direction of things were going. And I was emoting to my friend Travis, and he was like, I got a position available. He was working at this very high-end, very kind of boutique office inside this fancy sports facility called the Sports Club LA.
Okay.
And the Sports Club LA had multiple little offices, settings around the West Coast. One of them was in Irvine, and then there was this place called Sports Med that was like a little entity of Rehab within the Sports Club LA. So it was, I can't remember exactly, something like $350 a month to be a member of this sports club to exercise. I mean, this place was like, in downtown Irvine with a sushi bar in the basement and, a pool outside and an escalator to take up to the cardio loft. So you could ride an escalator and then go onto the Stairmasters. This is like really strange California thinking.
I've seen things like that in other places besides California. It's like, really? Do you really? Is that really what
the
you
Sports
need there?
Club LA also had a facility in New York City. So
Okay.
it was very, it was upper echelon, whatever. So Travis was like, at that time, he was the like director of that little office. So he had, a small staff. I think there were 4 other therapists and they had a vacancy. And he was like, you can come down here and work with me.
Okay.
And I had some pull to get out of the Inland Empire, to get out of the armpit. And so, but I didn't love Orange County. It was always kind of intimidating to me. So I found a little tiny studio in San Clemente, which if you know San Clemente's little pier bowl, it's like this like beautiful quintessential Southern California, like quaint beachy community. And when I was growing up, I always loved San Clemente the best because there was like this little pier bowl, the surf culture was there, but then there were all these mountain bike trails into the mountains, like right from this center place. Of course, by the time I actually moved there, those mountain bike trails had turned into, track homes. It had all been built out. But yeah, so I left Riverside, moved to San Clemente, and started working in Irvine at the sports club, Sports Fit, with Travis as my supervisor.
All right. And so what was the impetus for coming to Alaska?
Well,
you're in San Clemente, this place you absolutely love. You think it's great. And California to Alaska is a big move.
Yeah, I think I definitely am somebody who can say for the bulk of my life, I felt like I wasn't enough and felt like I didn't fit anywhere. And Orange County brought that to a head for me. Like, this isn't my place. If I could have, I've often said, if I could have lived, worked, and played just in my little tiny thing of San Clemente, maybe California would have spoken to me more as I continued to grow. But I wasn't comfortable in my own skin there. It was the longest home I'd ever known, but it didn't feel like my home. My parents had already left. My sister had left. I didn't have extended relatives there. And then I met a boy who, had some dreams of kayaking between Juneau and Seattle and, asked if I wanted to join in that. And I was like, well, that's pretty extreme considering I just barely kayak in the back flat bay of Newport Beach.
Might be a bigger step than I'm ready for at the moment.
But that conversation, kind of evolved into like, what is it that you want and where do you want to live? And, maybe it's better to live where you can play. And, it evolved further into like him always wanting to live in Alaska. And I think my, young upbringing of moving around a lot made it easy for me to be like, then why not move?
You've done this before. You've lived through it.
And initially it was like really, most people, I would expect the majority of the people listening know that I moved here with Greg Schlachter. So that's the boy that I'm talking about. And I think, it just came to that conversation. And initially it was, from my recollection, it was just like, well, you should go live where you play. We hadn't been dating that long. And then somehow it came in of like, oh, now we're both thinking of moving. And he actually found Haynes, Alaska, on the internet. It had just been written up in Powder magazine of its being, one of the premier heli ski sport places. And I think really it was like, had a little bit of all of Alaska without having like the intense cold of the interior or the big rain of, Ketchikan or Sitka or things like that. And, we came up for a trip, for a visit. The one caveat I do remember saying is that I don't want to, like, if we're really thinking of moving, I don't want to see it at its best. And
So when did you come?
November.
November?
Yeah. Yeah. November.
Depends on which day in November. Sometimes it's at Haynes at its best. Sometimes it's not.
November 2004, we came, and I had already done a little bit of research, and realized that there was no rehab services here at the time. There was no physical therapist. There wasn't even a chiropractor in that gap of time. And I called the search clinic, and Michelle Wing answered the phone. And I told her, like, I'm a physical therapist in Southern California, coming to Alaska for a visit, and, kind of flirting with the idea of maybe relocating, and you don't have any therapy services. Like, how come?
Do you want to have some? I know somebody that might be willing to work for you.
How come? And she put me in touch with Marcia Scott, and Marcia, who was the director of the search clinic at the time, and Marcia said, well, when you're here, come into the clinic and, like, let's sit down and have a conversation. And so I did. And I met with Marcia Scott and Linda Kierstead, who was the medical director at the time. And I often joke that it felt like they, like, rolled out the red carpet a little bit, and that they happened to be at a time when they were actively going through a clinic remodel. And there was this little room. I don't know did you ever see me as in my little tiny room in the basement.
In the room in the basement, at the end of the hall.
Yeah, next door to the utility closet and the mechanical room.
I think that was the first place I met you, was there.
Probably. It was the first place I met a lot of people in town. So they had that little room, and it was like, well, maybe this could be our rehab room. Like, we realize we need this service, but we don't really know where to start. And to shorten that, in the end, by the time I left town, Marcia and Linda and I had agreed to pursue a grant together. And, Search has great grant writers, and so they did that part of it, and I just implemented the physical therapy knowledge, like what kind of equipment do you need, all of that just the basics of things. So we were here in November. By January, we had secured 2 years of funding to start a physical therapy program here in Haynes. And, they were very clear with me that it was a native preference hire. So even though I had done the back work to help, they had to put it out. And if Alaskan Native or Native American applied for the job, they would get preference. And I completely understood that. And at this time, to be totally honest, I was still like, am I moving to Alaska?
Did I just talk myself into a job in Alaska?
No, like, I said I would help you with this project because that kind of sounded exciting to me.
So, along with that, what was the weather like when you were here in November?
Well, I remember being cold and sunny and beautiful. And it was like right around Eagle Fest time. I don't think the festival was happening, but I do remember Greg had contacted Dan about, the Alaska nature tours, because that's kind of the world that he wanted to get into. And I remember driving out the highway and seeing all the eagles in the trees and getting a lot of the history in that way. We stayed at the Hotel Housing Land. This is one thing that I think is entertaining, especially now, but like, we walked from the Hotel Housing Land everywhere. So we had walked up, like, the highest, the furthest we'd gone was, like, Skyline area, kind of looking around, just wandering. And we didn't even know that, like, anything past, like, the Fort, like, Mud Bay area existed. Like, we didn't go in that direction at all, which I just think is kind of humorous. But so the weather was cold and clear and lovely until the last day when we were supposed to fly out. And then it snowed. And luckily, unbeknownst to us that this would be a rare thing, there was a ferry late that night. So we didn't even get snowed in a full 24 hours. So
you thought this was just like, wow, if we can't fly, we
can just get on the ferry.
The ferry shows up every
easy.
time. Yeah.
So here is kind of a fun part of this little story, that we had that extra day and we hadn't yet gone over to the fairgrounds. So we walked over to the fairgrounds and went to the brewery. I'd met Paul Wheeler, and sampled some beer and, had a good long conversation with Paul. And there happened to be another person in there who later now I know is Lee Close.
Okay.
And so Paul and Lee and Greg and I were chatting, and, Greg and I taste the beer and we really like it. And it's this fun, novel thing of like, oh, well, we could bring some growlers back to California with us. And so we decided we were going to buy 4 growlers to carry. And this part, it kind of doesn't fit with me. So I don't know when they stopped you being allowed to bring liquids on the airplane, but it had to have been after 2004. Because I know, because I would have thought it was 9/11.
I thought it was after 9/11 too.
But it had to have been later than that, because we carried 4 growlers in a box on the airplane.
On the airplane.
But sidestep. So
did you have to give one of them to the captain or something? Was that how you got past? How you said
to the security guards.
Percentage share on the way?
Yeah, exactly. No, so but the funny thing is that we were from California, and so we pretty much only carried bank cards.
Okay.
We didn't have cash.
Good luck paying for your beer at Paul's.
Not in 2004
no,
and not in
now.
2026.
Yeah, still doesn't happen.
And
Cash only.
I love that. And Paul, I definitely will credit Paul to putting the icing on the cake for Haynes for me.
Yeah.
Because when we said, "Oh, we don't have cash," he said, "It's snowing out. Take the growlers. Take my car. Go get cash at the bank," because there wasn't an ATM at Dalton City at the time. Yeah. Drop the growlers off at the Hotel Housing Land. Bring my car back. Pay me, and then you can walk back. So that's what we did.
And you're like, whoa, nobody would do this in Southern California.
No. And that is it. Like, you can test drive a car without the dealership having to ride along with you. Mm-hmm. And it, like, that, for me, was this is the kind of place I want to live. I want to live in a place where there's just, organic trust and connection of humans. And of course, you find out a little bit later that some of that comes with this, insulation of we couldn't go anywhere with his car except to the border, and you're not going to get across the border, or on the ferry, and you're not going to get on the ferry. But still, from that Southern California mindset.
Your Southern Californian's here with his car in a snowstorm.
Exactly.
He doesn't know how well you're going to be able to drive in snow.
Exactly.
That's what I would have worried about. Have you ever driven in snow before?
I had not. Greg had, because he grew up in upstate New York. Yeah. But yeah, yes. And then it is funny to hear Lee Close kind of joke and be like, yeah, Paul was a little nervous when you guys drove away with his car. But yeah, so if we back up, so then we got funding for 2 years. They put it out. They didn't have I don't know if they had other applicants for the position at all for the physical therapist, but they didn't have a native applicant. And so then they officially called and offered me the job. And then it became a real conversation of am I moving to Alaska? Are we moving to Haines, Alaska? Is this happening? And yeah, so then by April we moved in 2005.
Wow, that was quick. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That was really quick. Coming up in November, and you're here in April the next.
Yep.
Wow. So did your friends appreciate the beer when you brought it home? Or did you guys just drink it all yourself? Did you share it?
No, we shared it. We shared it. That part doesn't stand out real strong in my memory, but I'm sure we shared it with one of Greg's best friends, Wayne, who liked beer and was. I have an inkling that he loved it. Yeah.
Well, anybody that drinks beer that doesn't like Haynes Brewing Company beer, I've yet to find that.
Yeah, my dad still carries, the cans in his, he'll put it in his checked luggage to take it home, because it is this great novel thing to share the Haynes Brewery beer around the world.
So April 2005, moving to Haines, Alaska. Mm-hmm. Was that a little nerve-wracking trying to figure out, because from what you've said, you guys hadn't been dating that long, you and Greg. So now not only are you moving to Alaska, you're moving to Alaska with somebody that you haven't been in a relationship for, was it a year at that point? Mm-hmm. It wasn't even a year. Mm-hmm. Was there a little second guessing, am I doing the right thing here? Or was it just hey, this is going to be a great adventure, let's go for it?
You know, I've realized about myself, I often have an exit strategy. Like I got a little safety net somewhere.
Yeah.
And when I make a decision, I know that I have that, and then I don't look back. Like I do remember like leaving Riverside and moving to San Clemente, and my dad and I driving around looking for a place, and he said those words to me, like, because I was a little bit like, am I doing the right thing? What am I, you know? And he said, Marnie, make a decision and don't look back.
Okay.
And that stayed with me, you know, just a year and a half later.
Yeah.
And I knew I had a job, like I had a career that I could go back to California and get a job. Mm-hmm. And I could go back to Orange County and get a job. I had set a good relationship for myself there, a good reputation for myself there. I had some well-known orthopedic surgeons that were like, please don't leave. I was working with the Angels Corporation, with their pitching crew. And I mean, I had kind of a cool little thing going there, but it was also all sports and orthopedics. And it had become somewhat predictable for me in the injuries that were coming forward. But anyway, so that was a little bit of a safety net. Like I knew I was leaving all that in a very positive realm, that if things didn't work out here, I could go back and have a job. I had a home in Riverside that I owned, that I was renting. Mm-hmm. I knew I had a place that I could land at any moment. Yeah. And we did have these good friends, Gene and Doug happened to have a private small airplane, and he was a pilot, and he figured out exactly how many hours
it would take to come get you if you needed to escape.
Yep. So he wrote down his cell number and like the number of hours on this little slip of paper, and he said, Marnie, you put this in your wallet, and anytime you need me, you there it is, just you
but
call.
That's how long it's going to take me to get there,
and I'll be there.
Yeah.
And so I feel like
that's awesome.
I had this little safety net, and I was excited for like, this is an adventure, you know, all of it felt like an adventure. The moving with somebody that I didn't know and hadn't had that, I knew him, of course, didn't have a long history with, and didn't have huge like expectations at that time of like, you know, we're going to live our whole life together, whatever. It was like, we're going on this adventure together. And I think too, it was that like I had spent a lot of time up until then, you know, really, as we talked about, from like my high school years on, being so focused on this, like a goal, and just being really driven, that this somehow felt like a fun, just like, let's just see. And I had a job here. You know, I had a job that was still in my profession, that was still really going to now challenge me in a whole different way. You know, now I'm coming up as a sole physical therapist, no other physical therapists in the community practicing. There was Margaret Piggott, who had done pediatric work and school work, but not like really community. I think people called on her on occasion, but she'd never practiced as like a community therapist. And, you know, starting a program and having to be responsible for that. And, you know, we had grant funding for 2 years, but the hope was that within that 2 years, it could be a self-sustaining entity and hopefully be profitable for Search. Yeah. So, you know, there was this like little challenge in me too of that, like, can I do this? And, you know, I think too, thinking about living in a place with 4 seasons, you know, a small community, there was like enough of that like thrill and excitement that I don't remember having a huge amount of anxiety around actually making the move.
Did you guys drive all the way up?
Mm-hmm. And what
was that like?
Oh, it was so great. Yeah, I remember us just really having a super fun time, and, you know, a lot of like, some of this feels like it's Greg's story more than mine, but like he worked as a private trainer in that high-end sports club. That's how we met. And so he had these very wealthy clients, and I remember one of them handing him a whole wad of cash when we got into the car. We had all of our camping stuff. We were like going to camp the whole way, and instead we had money to like put ourselves up into some, you know, lodging that otherwise we would have never been able to do, which was pretty fun. And his like Gene and Doug the pilot, they'd put us up in a fancy hotel in Seattle and paid for a fancy dinner. And so there was kind of this like
wine and dine the whole way up.
We totally did, which is so funny because, you know, then we're like coming to rural Alaska where that's not going to be.
Nope.
And it was never really part of my life in that like the fancy world. That was a lot of the like, I don't fit in Orange County. Like I don't necessarily need to be wearing fancy clothes or going to fancy dinners or, you know, I like something that tastes good, but I don't know that it has to have like a label on it or whatever. So that's a memorable part of the drive for me. It was definitely like kind of like saying goodbye to something that I didn't fit in that much anyway, and opening. And then I have this like clear picture of leaving Haynes Junction and driving the pass to Haynes in April.
Was it good weather?
It was bluebird.
Perfect day
With everything just covered in white and mountains like I had never seen in my life.
That's something else, isn't it?
I
love making that drive.
I do too. I still feel like it is one of the most therapeutic things that I can do for myself. If I'm like struggling with making a decision or feeling anchored in myself, like getting in the car and driving to the pass is like it's medicine for me. And that first drive will never leave my visual, you know, mindset. I can just play it again and again.
That's one of the drives I love to take if people, it's their first time to Haynes. Take them up to Haynes Junction and then bring them back. And like you say, if you get those bluebird days, regardless of the season, in the spring with all the snow, it's fabulous. But throughout the summer with different levels, you get those bluebird days coming across the pass. And just about all of them, you could be talking about anything. And all of a sudden everybody just kind of shuts up. And they're just looking around and going, oh my God, am I really in this spot right now?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, that's what it was. Like I remember there was very little, if any, words exchanged during that time, and probably just lots of moments of like trying to make sure that I closed my jaw.
Yeah, no, that's one of the blessings of being here, is we get to drive up there when we want to.
Yeah.
So you get to Haynes, and now you get to start your own practice. Well, not yours, but you're building something that hasn't been there before. You're setting everything up from scratch. What was that like for you?
I remember the thing that like shook me a little, something that I was really not expecting, was everybody knew who I was before I got here.
Yep.
Especially, you know, I have a unique name. And so, like, I remember being at the Mountain Market and, like, meeting somebody, and I'd say, you know, oh, yeah, I'm Marnie, I'm new to town. And immediately they were like, you're the new physical therapist. And here's the second thing that came in every time. You're going to help Heather Lundy.
Okay, because that was right after her accident.
Right. I don't know if I'm romanticizing it a little too much.
Go ahead. It's your story. You can romanticize it if you want.
I feel like one of these days I'll have to find like my journal entry and her full dates. But if not the exact day, really close, the day that she got hit is like the day we left California.
Okay.
And so she was still down in Seattle at the, as she called it, the Sleepless in Seattle nursing home. And, you know, apparently also kind of unbeknownst to me, you know, the search clinic, and now I get it because I've seen it, like when things are happening and new in town, it's on the radio and it's in the newspaper. So there was already an article about the fact that there was going to be a physical therapist and my name and where I was coming from. And the doctors had already been talking to her doctors in Seattle, and the only way she was going to get released
is if there's
PT if there was somebody here.
Yeah.
And so I do remember at that moment being like, oh my.
Like, a lot of pressure on me here right at the start.
How does everybody already know my name? My profession? And who is Heather Lundy?
Who is Heather Lundy?
And why do I have to save her? I don't understand. You know, and
it's a lot of pressure you guys are putting on me right here.
Right. And it slowly became clear, you know, over, I can't remember exactly 10 days to 2 weeks after being here when she got to come home. And, the If You Lived Here, I'd Know Your Name book was released that same year. It hadn't, I can't remember if it came out. It must have come out either right before or right after, I landed here. So that was it. Like, that was a big time in her life too. And, and Haynes, like, a well-known published author, getting that big first book. And, so I remember really clearly driving into her driveway and like walking to her door and having to take a lot of long, slow breaths and being like, well, if you can't do well on this one, you probably can't
You're not going to be here very long.
Mm-mm. Yeah. Like I could feel that right away on how important, it is to take care of this community.
Yeah.
If you're going to be a provider in this community and really respected and cared for in return, like you care for this community. That felt obvious to me on that day. And it was interesting because,
you rose to a challenge because that was over 20 years ago. So you conquered it.
Yeah, we did it together. Yeah. And I often, I feel like that first year of spending a lot of time with Heather, like Heather taught me how to live in Alaska during our physical therapy sessions, we would work on her gate, walking the docks, and I'd learn who owned all the boats.
Yeah.
And like If You Lived Here, I'd Know Your Name book, I would read before bed at night. And, the next morning, like I'd read about, I think it's okay to say, I read about Maisie Jones in the book. And then Maisie Jones would happen to walk into my office. And I can't tell you how many times that happened over and over again of like, I know these are familiar names and stories. And like, it helped me to really feel like an integral part of the community. Yeah.
So at the end of your 2 years, it was profitable.
Yeah. Yeah. So much so that then, at that time, Search as an organization had rehab in Sitka, but not in any of the other facilities. And so then I went to Juneau and helped set them up with rehab there. I just helped consult and get them up and running. And then also the same thing at Prince of Wales. Yeah.
So where in this journey, so you're setting up clinics, getting Search dialed in on the PT rehab part of this. Where does the yoga aspect come in for you? Was that before you came up here? Was that after you were here? How did that transfer in there?
Yeah, so I had taken a few yoga classes at the High-End Sports Club LA, more power type yoga, or some restorative classes. I remember for a long time I thought yoga was boring. If I was gonna spend an hour and a half doing something, I didn't want to be like laying on my back for half of the time. Honest. And I was sometime in that first year, I was an exercise person. I was a gym person. I always liked having that. I ran a lot, but I also liked having weights and whatever. And there was the Strong Woman Stay Fit was a book that was out at the time that a group of ladies had gotten together, and they were using this book at the Haynes High School to have a little exercise class. But it was, 10 exercises. They did the same 10 exercises for 10 repetitions every day, and I went to 2 classes and was like, this isn't gonna work for me. And I don't remember if Pam Sloper approached me, who was the head of Wise Woman at the time, or I approached her. But somehow that Strong Woman Stays Fit turned into what became Morning Muscles, which was a class that I taught for a long time. So I was teaching already, exercise classes in town. And it happened that I went to Hawaii on a little vacation. And in Hawaii, there was a little yoga studio that a friend of ours that I was traveling with wanted to go to. And so every morning we went to this little yoga studio, and it was the first yoga class that I really went to that I liked a lot. It had like this, like the progression made a lot of sense. Like, yes, you started low, but then you worked up to some, bigger move, and then you came back down. And I remember leaving it feeling that, and, the little bit more of the understanding of like, this is exercise. And yes, you get that like focus flow, but there's something more here. There's something more here. And I couldn't fully put my hand on it. I come home, and it just so happened that it was at a time when Haynes had the Haynes Yoga Club for a long time, where they had various members of the club teach. Nobody, as far as I know, is a certified yoga teacher. Not that it matters that much. But they had kind of lost their primary teachers. I think Mandy Ramsey was pregnant at the time, and so she had kind of stepped out of teaching and even practicing that much. And Julie Anderson came to me, and she was like, I really like going to yoga, and we don't have anybody who's like stepping into this teaching role. Like, would you consider teaching yoga? And I was like, well, I can't even claim to practice yoga, like, let alone decide that I'm going to teach it. Uh-huh. And she's like, Marnie, we really we need a leader. And I said, well, if people understand that I'll be teaching the yoga postures from my exercise and, physical therapy background without having like the full container of yoga. And she was like, I think that's better than nothing. And so I started doing that. And it held hands with the time that, after the rehab kind of department started running at Search, it also became really apparent to me that one of the big reasons why they needed rehabilitation, physical therapy, was because of the chronic pain phenomenon that was happening and the opioid abuse that was happening, and they didn't know how to address it in any way. And I happened to go to Anchorage to a conference that was put on by the Alaska chapter of physical therapy, where this group from Australia, from what's called NOI, N-O-I, the Neuro Orthopedic Institute, came. The 4 of them came, and they taught this continuing education class on the sensitive nervous system, which was about like nerve gliding or nerve flossing, which is more known now. You can YouTube videos of nerve flosses. But at that time it was a little less known and very specific to like physical therapists doing this work. And the last half an hour of this 4-day seminar, this gentleman, Adrian Lowe, gave a talk on explain pain. And it was the first time that I had ever heard in that way how pain is an experience of our nervous system rather than an input from the periphery. And it gave me this whole idea of like understanding the physiology of pain can actually help us to cope when pain becomes chronic or persistent. Like in that 20 minutes, my mind was blown, and I had a spark of hope of like all these people who are being sent to me, on my physical therapy schedule, many of them sitting there telling me, I'm only here because if I don't come to see you, my doctor will no longer give me, my narcotic prescription. And I felt like I had no hope on how I could really help them until I kind of got that inkling. So I dove hard into the explain pain world and understanding pain science. And the more I drove into that, I traveled to Australia, I traveled to the UK, all to study with the NOI guys and this gentleman, Lorimer Mosley, who at the time was like the big pain researcher, especially from the physical therapy world. Like he was the author of this book, Explain Pain, one of them with David Butler. And he was like really just producing, writings and research and like getting it out there of like, we have to help this chronic pain, pandemic that was out there, that everybody's just addicted to narcotics because we don't know what else to do, and it's failing. So through all of that learning, it kept coming back of like, it's not about the part that's hurting. It's about the whole person, right? It's about all of it. What we know, what we don't know, what our thoughts and beliefs are, what is our spiritual connection to life, and what's our, definition of who we are and how we walk in this world. So this is like all in my headspace when I start leaning into teaching the asanas, postures from the yoga practice, and starting to look more into like, what is yoga beyond these asanas? And it's that. It's the study of self. Yoga means to yoke, to bring together body, mind, and spirit. And when you think of the whole yoga practice, yes, there's asanas in it, but it's also breath and mindfulness and kindness and how we are in the world. And it just like, the teachings come to us when we need them. This is that, coming back to that, of that, like these two things started coming into my life space at a very similar time. And so I ended up deciding to go to yoga teacher training, primarily because I wanted to see if I could learn further on that side and use it to help hold hands and bridge the gap with the pain science world. And with this idea of like, if I'm going to continue to teach yoga in Haynes, I should learn yoga. But it was really more of that, like, I think this could help, where I feel like my profession, my academical, is that a word? My academic background is falling short.
Well, from personal experience, I think you went down the right road.
Why, thank you.
Not that you care what I think or not, but just to share with others, is that I knew you and Greg around town and everything, but when the first connection I think that I really made with you on a deeper level is I was seeing you as a physical therapist because I had hurt my hamstring, and it was like a year and a half, 2 years, constant pain. It never seemed to go away. Kept having MRIs, trying to check, is there a hip, is there this? Everything comes back. And there's the one day that you were like, have you ever thought of doing yoga? And I was like, no. That was the farthest thing from my mind. But I think my answer was like, but if you think this would help, I'm willing to try, because I'm tired of this. But the other thing I said is, I'm just going to do a private lesson. I cannot go to a group and try and, that's not my personality. If I've got to go to a group of 20 people that all know how to do yoga and try and work through this, I'm never going to show up. And you were gracious enough to say yes. And for, what was it, 5 or 6 years, like every Monday in the evening, 5:30.
Showed up at my house.
I was meeting at Marnie's to learn yoga. And I don't do all of the flow anymore, but about 4 or 5 days a week, I'm still doing like 15, 20 minutes of the hip openers, the different stretches that for my shoulders and stuff, pigeons, things that I feel are helping me with where I am at that moment. And I know that the days that I do even the short practice, that I sleep better. And it does allow me that time. Any other exercise I'm doing, I'm thinking about other things. But with the yoga, I through your teachings of just being mindful that I'm concentrating on where my body is, where my arms are, where my legs are my hips in the right position? And so all the other thoughts just kind of go through. And it's just that really relaxing part. And there's times that I've gone months without doing any yoga, and I realize the first time I go back is like, okay, I've been missing this. But it's made, so I think I've thanked you before. I hope I've thanked you before, but to thank you in front of everybody else, that suggestion made a huge difference in my life. I hadn't gone to opiates before, but if it hadn't been for that, I probably would have at some point to cover that. Because I wasn't sleeping at night. I mean, you can ask my friends and family. I was a jerk to be around because if you don't sleep, you're irritated all the time.
Yeah.
It's just not a good place to be. And then that mindfulness aspect that you started adding on to the yoga practice, like I'd mentioned earlier, because when I was trying to do a headstand,
I remember that.
it took forever for me. I was so frustrated that I couldn't do it. And every week you're like, Doug, doesn't matter where you're at today, tomorrow. And then when I did it, and then I couldn't do it for like a couple of weeks, it's like, you've got to be kidding me. And it's same thing. It's like, tomorrow you might be able to do it. Just because you can't today doesn't mean there's anything wrong. And now I could probably do a headstand right here without a problem. And I haven't done one in over a year probably. But every time that I go to do one, I can pop right up and it's not a problem anymore. But it took I think it was like over a year.
It was a long time.
It was a long time for me to figure that one out.
Yeah. And I think like when I came back from Hawaii and had gotten into that little yoga class, I also found this online source called Yoga Glow, which I always compared to like Netflix of yoga in the early years of like yoga being available online, because they had 20 different teachers and all different styles and lengths of classes and whatever that you could jump on, and I found this one particular teacher that was really like orthopedic in the way that she described everything, but there was lots of fun hand balances and hops and all of these things that called to who I was at one time in my life with the gymnastics world.
Into it.
But it also reminded me, and which is where I was going with this with the headstand, is that it's important for us in life to build a foundation, right? And once we have that foundation, which takes time, it takes gentleness. We can't rush through it, right? If you don't set up that foundation of where your body is in space, where your breath is in a headstand or handstand or whatever, you're going to fall.
Yep.
You're going to fall. And if you rush it, if you try to jump into it, you likely will fall harder. And, anybody who's been in a yoga class with me that we've done through handstands or arm balances or whatever, somebody falls, I always make the joke of like, the person who makes it look the easiest is the one who has fallen the most.
Yep.
Like we do have to fall. And that's how we learn to like set up that foundation and to be really comfortable with where we are at that moment in time. And knowing that it's gonna change, because everything changes in life.
It just seemed after month and month and month, I didn't know if it was ever going to change. I knew the theory behind it, but it was kind of hard. I was like, my gosh, am I this slow at learning?
Yeah. Yeah, and you're not. It's just, it takes time. And a lot of it is that, like, learning to be with your breath in those positions and learning not to bully ourselves, right? And, I mean,
I still struggle with that.
Of course.
Bullying myself.
Don't we?
Yeah.
Don't we? I mean, that comes right into our compassion world.
Yeah, I'm terrible at that. Yeah. We won't get into that. That's a
we can.
We can.
Or we can make an appointment. We can.
But yeah, no. I think probably one of the best things I do in life is bully myself. That's probably
It might be the thing that you're the most practiced at.
It is. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think I've had a lot of guidance from other people around me.
Yeah. Yeah. We learn that.
We learn it from others. Yeah. Because what you were talking about with everybody knowing everybody in a small town and them knowing you when you got here, when you grow up in a small town, they really know you.
Or they think they do.
They think they do. And yeah, sometimes the standards that you are held to aren't always fair.
No.
But keep working through it.
Gently.
One day at a time.
One breath at a time.
One breath at a time. There you go. That's even better. One breath. See, it's been a while since I've been to class. Maybe that's why I'm slacking on some of my terms.
You remember Freddie Sloan?
Yeah.
He had a tattoo on the back of one of his shoulders. Can I swear on here?
Sure. Go ahead.
That said, your opinion of me is none of my fucking business.
That sounds like Fred.
And it's good words.
It's good words.
It's good words.
Yeah.
Right? It's what somebody else thinks of you, what somebody else expects of you, what somebody else thinks they know of you. Unless you want to make it your business, it doesn't have to be.
And the worst thing for me is it's not what you think of me, it's what I think you think of me.
Absolutely, which is always worse.
It's always worse.
Always worse.
It's always worse. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's because when you hear the negative from a few people, you assume or at least I do, assume everybody else thinks that. Mm-hmm. And that some of them, if that's what they're telling me, then most of them think worse. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And in the end, we're all humans having this human experience. Mm-hmm. And so usually the things, the things that somebody says to you that feel negative to you, what they're saying to themselves about themselves might be even harsher and uglier. And, we all have those battles that we fight inside, and we never know what somebody else is fighting.
And that's one of the reasons I wanted to have this podcast, is have conversations like this, that hopefully people out there that don't have somebody in their life that's telling them that they can see that there's other people that struggle, that have self-doubt, that have whatever it might be, but can overcome that. They have support. They're working through it, whatever you might be, that there's, all of us have had trauma in our lives. All of us have had setbacks in our lives. Mm-hmm. It's how do you respond to that? How do you build off of that and use that and build that into a strength? Mm-hmm. Just because you have trauma doesn't mean that's brought you down at all. No. It's just how do we respond? And then the other aspect of it, how do we treat and support the other people? Because you don't know this is one of the things when I was mayor that I mentioned to people quite often, because people would come into the office and they would just be, a lot of times people would say they seemed really off, that the level of the problem and their reaction were on two different levels. Mm-hmm. And some of this was based on trauma readings and stuff that Cesare and Kelly had told me about. But it was like, that's because that response is not based on what you're telling them here. It's a lot of times it can be based on, you don't know, did they just find out that a family member has cancer? Did they just lose? There's so many things that stack up. Mm-hmm. And when I started reading about that, I realized I did a lot of that in my life that I'll take from when I was very young. I would take all these things in, and then just one day I'd just blow up and everybody's like, what the heck's going on with Doug? Mm-hmm. Because I didn't know how to process all these other negative things that had happened, or all these other stressful moments that had happened. And I just internalized them until that one time. It took me a long time, like 30 some years, before I realized that. I'm still adjusting to it now, trying to figure out, okay, how do I deal with these bad things that have happened and deal with them in a positive way rather than causing harm to myself or others. Yoga's helped that.
Yay.
You can get into that and just really, yeah. It's helped.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a lifetime of practice. Not just yoga practice, but it's a lifetime of practice of learning how to cope and how to let trauma come through our beings, right? The trauma getting stored in our body, trauma being part of our bloodstream. There's that ancestral trauma, cultural trauma. I mean, the word trauma sometimes to me gets like, whew. We can traumatize our trauma too.
We can.
And, it's that I use that a lot, like accepting that this is our story, this is part of who we are, and choosing to include it by talking about it, by acknowledging that we don't want it to continue. We don't want to pass this on to others, that we want to actually heal. We want to move it through our body. We don't want it to be stuck in our hamstrings.
Yes. And that's when, I've talked to some people about trauma and dealing with it, and their response has been, it's so overblown. Everybody's complaining about trauma now. It's just, I think trauma is a word for it, but we've all had stressors in our lives. We've all had challenges in our lives. There's multiple ways that you can describe trauma without saying trauma, because I think some people think of trauma, and for a long time myself, it was like, I wasn't in a war. I wasn't in a car wreck. I wasn't in these major incidents. I didn't lose limbs. I didn't, you think of trauma as this huge thing, but there's a whole lot of levels of trauma, and I think each of us reacts to those differently. So what might be something very traumatic for me, some things you might be like, just move on, and vice versa.
Yeah, and a lot of that has to do with what we talked about before, of like modeling, of your upbringing, of what that trauma or what that experience is triggers from your background that you may not even be aware of, and how you're met in the moment and those initial moments just after whatever that experience is. If your whole person isn't seen, felt, heard, nurtured during that moment of stress, trauma, that's when trauma becomes something that doesn't get processed, right? So if you are in that moment and somebody walks by and is like, that's no big deal, and moves on, or even worse, shames you for that experience, or turns their back against you because they don't believe whatever it was that you were doing was a valuable thing, like the Vietnam War is a huge example of that. We have all these soldiers coming back, being in this incredibly intense experience, and then not being received in the country, not being seen, held, heard, nurtured for all that they'd been through, instead maybe being, shamed, condemned, whatever. That's when that now turns into PTSD, right? Because now we have this experience that we weren't actually able to process or nurture. And that happens all the time. That happens often with things that some people might feel like is not that big of a deal, but we also don't know what came before it. And so to me, like I said it this morning to a friend, like we don't need to compare or quantify traumatic experiences or grief. That's not what those things are meant to do. We all have an emotional space that just needs to be held for what it is.
That was one of the things that Kelly and Cesare taught me during the slide event, was you can't compare your grief to somebody else. Because just because a mother loses 3 kids and one only loses one, is one deserving of 3 times as much sympathy as the other? Nope. No. You don't get to compare them. So this kind of sets up to the next stage. So we've gone through the PT, yoga, and the next thing that the yoga's gone on for years, but I remember after the slide, you reached out to me because you had been at a conference or something down south, and you'd run into, I should have looked up, I apologize for not looking up her name, but Compassionate. And it wasn't Compassion ATE, it was Compassion IT. And to push compassion out, and you reached out to me, is like, hey, is this something, I think our community needs this, how do we make this happen? And I appreciate you bringing that forward, because I was all in on that. I think we're both all in on that. And then we couldn't make it happen due to financial reasons, but I really wish we could do more with that. I'd like to find a way to move forward. What was your remembrance of seeing her and listening to her speech on Compassionate?
It's interesting because I don't remember her name right now either, which is really sad. And
I still have the wristband.
Yeah, so I'll bring it back. It was, there's a woman in Southern California who started this Compassionate campaign as turning the act of compassion into a verb. So that was like compassion it. And she had gone through I think it was the Stanford School of Compassion and Altruistic Psychology. Maybe that's not right. Doesn't matter. But she was well schooled in this, like, getting compassion out there. And had written a book and had this campaign that came with these wristbands that were black and white, and they said compassionate on both sides. And the idea was, like, you know, when you did a compassionate act towards somebody else, you flipped it over. And when you did a compassionate act toward yourself, you also flipped it over. Yep. So it was like this nice way of this consistent reminder to act in a compassion way and to put it out there. And, you know, she was really well schooled in bringing things to the business setting. And, you know, I had approached her that we had gone through the slide. I think the year before, I want to say this was 2021 when I was down south.
Yeah, it was 2021.
And I thought it would be a beautiful thing to bring to our community and make it kind of multidisciplinary, bring the school in, you know, bring the search clinic in, the, you know, churches, and like really start to open our arms, you know, and come together. This is like, compassion is something that we all need and we all benefit from giving as well. And then I remember what put the halt on it. It was the price tag.
The price tag was considerable.
And I mean, maybe too much to a fault, but it turned me off of the whole thing because it made me feel like, oh, like, that's not very compassionate. Like, that's a business that, like, didn't feel good to me to say, like, now you're actually trying to somewhat take advantage of this community that has suffered a huge loss and needs something to bring them together. And I guess my remorse is that dropping that leadership campaign also sort of dropped the conversation of, like, us actually still creating something for the community. And maybe someday that can still come back, because compassion still is something. It's still an action. It's still a verb. Whether we bring in, you know, a more organized entity or we figure out a way to make it happen, it's still a beautiful thing to bring forward.
Yeah, I was bummed when we got the quote.
It was huge.
It was huge, because I think we both had a figure. I think when we talked about it later, we were both thinking it was going to be an X range, and we're like, yeah, we can figure that was still going to be expensive, but we could figure out a way to manage it with search and the borough and everything.
I think it was something like 16 times what we had said.
It was way beyond what we had expected. And we got the email, and one of us called the other one right away. It was like, are we reading this correctly?
And I do remember sitting down and, like, punching the numbers of what it meant that that individual was actually going to get paid by the hour. And I was like,
yeah, no.
I can't justify this in any way. I can't even, like, it didn't feel right to me to go to the borough or to Rasmussen Foundation or the Community Foundation and ask for that kind of funding. Mm-hmm. It just was like, no, we got to figure something else out.
Figure out something else. Mm-hmm. But I agree with you that is something that more of us need to acknowledge on a day, whether we acknowledge it or not, to act in that manner. Mm-hmm. And I think it gets back to what we were talking about before, is not knowing what somebody else is going through on a given day. Yeah. And the number of times you see it in interviews, you see it in books, you see it all this, these people that are like, you know, this person kept me from doing this just because they acknowledged me. They smiled and said hi when I was going into the post office. They opened the door for me, or they gave me a hand with this, and I was on my way to take my life. And that one person, that one interaction, it's like, oh wait, maybe somebody does care. And I think when you get that in your mind, that it's not all about us individually, if we start thinking about the people around us and how we're interacting with them and what can we do to uplift your day. That and I found, especially the end of December, beginning of January, when the weather just absolutely sucked here and everybody was coming and complaining about it. I was like, well, you know, it's this, or you know, we do live in Alaska, and you know, I can guarantee in June snow's going to be gone. And you get it just to get a smile or a laugh or whatever, but it was just, what's something positive I can say right now? Because everybody's thinking negative thoughts. We're done with the weather. We're done with shoveling snow. We're done with the rain, whatever it was. Everybody's done with it. And it's like, okay, what? I don't know if it made any difference or not, but I was like, that's what I'm going to do, is I'm just going to try and make positive comments about this instead of adding it. Because for me, it was like, I was done with it too. I was right with everybody. I didn't want to do anything. So a lot of those comments were for my own benefit.
I told this story this morning to a friend as well, that I had a day during that like I had a full breakdown inside of just like, and it was an interesting thing of like, it's that reminder of how when we can't have our favorite thing, when we can't go forward with our plans, no matter how much we practice kindness to ourselves and whatever, like, we have emotions. I had emotions. I had big emotions that day. I was angry. I was sad. I was shoveling snow like a mad woman. And, I had this voice in my head that was like, all of these thoughts that you're having are unjustified. Like, they are not warranted thoughts. The world was over in my head, right? Everything was bad. And then there's this, like, you're making this as a story. Stop telling this story. Like, come back, be nice, blah, blah, blah. Like, this isn't true. Everything that I tell people to do, I could tell myself to do, and I couldn't get out of this emotional tornado. And I remember, like, just like hucking snow over my shoulder and it flying back in my face. It's like that windy, like, where do you put this? And I was like, I need to call Russell Kennedy, who's my dear friend and, has been a Zen Buddhist now for quite some time. And I was like, I need to call Russell Kennedy. I need Russell to ask his teacher, Reb, what do you do when you're in the emotional vortex and you have the rational mind telling you to stop it and you can't make it happen?
The wires aren't connecting.
And you know what came to my mind? Compassion. I know that Reb would tell Russell compassion. And I know Russell would tell me compassion. And it was an amazing moment of like, oh, I don't have to tell myself that my thinking isn't rational. I don't need to tell myself to get out of these stories and to stop feeling this way. I just need to be nice to myself for a few moments and say, wow, there's this little being out there and people know her as Marnie and she's struggling right now. And that's okay. It's okay to have these emotions and just like give yourself an, emotional self-hug. Nurture that a little bit. Honor it. And, does it make it go away? No. But it made the battle soften a lot, which brings us full circle back to compassion.
For me, it was because, snowblower's broken.
Oh yeah.
Furnace goes out. Loader's broken. This is broken. It's just like as soon as you get, then the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing, and it was one of those. The thought process for me. I should have thought about compassion, but it was like these are first world problems. There's a lot of people that don't have a snowblower that would love to have one, even if it's broken, so they could fix it, so they could plow snow. Yeah. There's a lot of people that don't have a furnace. Yeah. There's people that'll come. It's not going to be on the time frame that you want, but there are people here that can take care of that, and you have the funds to pay that person to fix it.
And that's comparing your struggles.
Yeah, it is. It's not. But I looked at it that it was like it's very beneficial for me that there is a way to fix these. None of the issues that I was dealing with were unfixable.
You're finding gratitude for.
I was finding gratitude. I'm grateful for what I have. I'm grateful that I can fix everything. I was frustrated that it wasn't being fixed on. Everything wasn't going on my time frame, but nothing ever does. So, yeah, it's just grateful for what I have. Grateful for what's here, and be even more grateful when it's all working. And now it's all working.
Great.
And now we don't have snow.
Well,
it's perfect.
It's so,
all the snow's gone.
it's not even February yet.
It's not even February yet. You're right. It will be when people see this, though. Okay, so now the next step, and you can tell me if I'm skipping anything. You're an author. So how did the opportunity to co-author this book come about?
Pain Science Yoga Life.
Pain Science Yoga Life
came through that 5-6 years of intense jumping into the pain science world, and traveling mostly again to study under Lorimer Moseley, and doing these master classes that NOI had put on internationally. And I met initially my co-author, Niamh Maloney, in Manchester. That's not true. In England. The little town is not coming. Nottingham. I'm like Robin Hood. Where was Robin Hood? Not Manchester. Nottingham, England. I'd gone to a master's class, and she and I just kind of connected, in a friendly way. She was at the time working at a university in Australia as a researcher, originally from Dublin, Ireland, also as a physiotherapist, but had gone more into the academic study, and also a yoga practitioner. And so we started having that conversation about yoga as a container to put all of this pain science, treat the whole person, think outside of the box of find it and fix it, and get away from like the pain in your back is about your back. So we had this discussion then. That would have been 2010. And then in 2012, we reunited again at another NOI conference in Adelaide, Australia. Again, had a similar conversation and started saying like, hey, now we've been talking about this for a couple of years. Like, maybe we should put together like a research study. And so we bounced that idea back and forth for a while. We'd have phone conversations and emails, and in the end, I kind of kept being like, I don't really have the population to pull a lot of data from, right? Mm-hmm. I live and work in this tiny community. Like, it's a microcosm of what we really want to be researching. Like, I could do some great case studies, but it's not like, I can't collect data on a couple 100,000 people to have like a good, systematic review type study to put out there. And then in 2017, so this is a long, and it wasn't like we weren't talking weekly, but we would come together, and, the pain world in Haynes was changing a lot. We had the pain management review committee at the search clinic, and, I had now stepped out of the search clinic and opened, Body IQ. And anyway, I traveled to, now Niamh had partnered with a gentleman who was living in Guernsey, which is one of the Channel Islands off of the UK. My sister lives in England, so I went to visit my sister and hopped over the channel to spend some time with Niamh in Guernsey. And during that little visit, we were like, it's time to do something. And I don't think it's about research. I think it's about taking what we know, what we've observed, what we know from yoga, what other researchers have already done and put out there, and put it in a book and make it readable for anybody who wants to pick it up. And so Pain Science Yoga Life was born out of that visit. We had an outline, we had the title.
So you had the title at that visit? When you started, that's what you guys wanted to have it as?
I remember it was one of the ideas. Okay. Because it kind of described the foundation of what we wanted to do, which was to teach you about pain science, about how to use yoga to get back to life. Okay. That was kind of the idea. Mm-hmm. So then, we had this little outline, and I don't remember the exact time frame, but very shortly after I left Guernsey and returned home, she happened to be at a conference where there was this publishing company there, Handspring Publishing, and she met an individual and just told them, like, hey, you know, I have a colleague that we've put together this outline, and, you know, we'd like to write this book. And that contact jumped on it. She was like, I want to see some sample writing, which we did not have. We had a brainstorm.
Hold that thought for a minute. This could take a little bit.
We basically had a whiteboard with a brainstorm on it, right? And so we were like, okay, all right, we can write a sample chapter. Mm-hmm. And so we like took one of our little pieces that, you know, we had outlined out, like this could be a chapter, and we co-authored a chapter together, sent it to this publisher, and they were like, we like it, we want a book proposal. Okay. we don't have that either. So then, like, neither one of us had authored before. I mean, she had done a lot of research, and so she had a bunch of journal articles out there published, but we had never put together a book proposal, so we had to learn how to do that, and we did that, which is, for those that don't know, it's basically a marketing strategy, looking at anything that's been written kind of under the subject. Who's your target audience going to be? Why is this going to be set aside from anything that else is already out there? Why is it needed? You know, what's the purpose, mission statement, objectives, all those little things. You basically put together this like marketing package for like why your book needs to be published. So we sent that in, and they said, we want it, and we want it in a year. And we're both, you guys are both working full time. Yep.
And yeah, you need to write a book in a year.
Yep.
And coordinate with somebody that's halfway around the world.
Yep.
Good thing for modern technology like email and
Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
And so we signed the contract. Mm-hmm. We argued, negotiated for, I think we ended up getting like a year and 4 months. And so we started writing in the end of 2018. And the book was published in 2020. And it, you know, was hard because it was published in 2020 with a publishing company who published alternative health stuff. Yeah. And their primary means of marketing was going to conferences.
And there were no conferences. Mm-hmm.
No, so the whole like book tour, their entire marketing strategy of how they'd always marketed things in the past didn't exist anymore.
So is that something did you ever talk to them about re-putting it out there or whatever after things changed a little bit, like in 2022, 2023, kind of putting some kind of a tour together to get it out there at all? Or did that just kind of, all the marketing just kind of...
You know, Neve and I we tried to do some things together to put it out there. We also had both, like, you know, put a lot of our lives aside to get this book done.
And you didn't really want to put a whole lot more
aside. Well, it was like we had to, like, pick things back up, you know? Mm-hmm. Like, I realized, like, I needed to pick Body IQ back up, you know, to make sure that I could continue to still have a living and make sure, to me, the needs of the community at the time were being met. You know, I know during that year, 2019, leading into, you know, 2020, like, I wasn't the most present community physical therapist because I was writing a lot. Mm-hmm. And so there was that. Neve had a baby in the time. She's like, I need to, like, actually be a mom. She was also running a practice with her partner who was a therapist. Yeah. They were wanting to get off of the island of Guernsey and go back into academia where they had both come from. And unfortunately, you know, what also happens in partnerships across the world and seeing things differently, we had some disagreements that were like coming more and more to a head of like, now the book is done and how we want it to be carried forward, and we needed to like come to a better understanding of what that would look like and what our partnership would look like. And, you know, in all honesty, I think it was hard. It was hard. And I think not having like that third party of the publisher saying like, no, you have to show up, we're doing this marketing strategy. Instead, it was like, if we want this marketed, we got to figure it out for ourselves.
Figure it out on your own.
And we're tired. And we're struggling. We're struggling in our lives independently. We're struggling in this partnership together. And something has to give. And so we kind of agreed that we were going to set it down for a while. And then fairly quickly, I think in 2022-ish, Handspring Publishing sold. And so it has a new publishing company. It's still out there. It's still out there.
And you, the one thing that I've heard several people tell me is, and you'd alluded this to in a different way, you never know those lessons until it's the right time. There's a lot of times that books, different things, music sometimes, somebody will put something out there, it doesn't catch, and it's just the right person seeing it, the right person listening to it, the right person reading it, and it's got a whole new life.
Yeah.
So you
yeah, and
the story isn't finished being written.
No, and I never went in. I didn't go into it with the like, I want to be, you know, a New York Times bestselling author. That's not the subject matter of the book. We also, you know, Neve came to it from that strong place of research and academia. I mean, the reference pages at the end of every chapter are immense. And, you know, that was her pushing to make sure that we had the meat behind, like we have evidence behind everything that we put in there. And if we didn't, we were very clear and like, this still needs more. But that doesn't always make it as chewable, as digestible, right? So I came into it more from the clinical side of like, but it's the person in front of me that's suffering. And that's the person that I want to write to. And she wanted to write to the clinician and the yoga teacher who's working with that person. And so we compromised in that, like, bringing the language down so that anybody could pick it up. But it is written as if you're talking to somebody who is the yoga teacher or the healthcare provider working with the person in pain. And I still think there's space for that same basic book. Even now, you know, 6 years, we'd have to go back in and do some fluffing of the research to make sure, you know, everything is still at that upper notch of what we know. But I still think it could be written 100% to the person who's looking for it. And that could give the whole thing a whole new life. And I've thought about it over and over again. A couple years ago, I sent myself on a digital nomad retreat. Have you heard of these?
You just go and there's no digital stuff at all? Is that what you're referring to? Or? No? A
nomad, meaning you can be anywhere.
You can be anywhere, okay.
And connected digitally.
Yep, okay.
Right? So I happened to find a place in Oaxaca in Mexico that just happens to be an aerial circus residency program that also allows these digital nomads to come in. So like the idea was that I was going to be on my computer writing.
The way you're smiling and laughing, I'm guessing there wasn't a lot of time on the computer writing.
Well, I went there with the intention, and really this was the intention of like, it was starting creeping towards, I'd always told myself that I had a 5-year umbrella to feel confident to stay within the bulk of the research that we had done without having to dive deep back into that research hole to upgrade that. And so it was like tipping on that, like 2024, you know, and it was published in 2020. So if I'm going to like take this book and remodel it into the package that's for the person who wants to look at yoga as a modality to shift their experience with pain, this is my time. So I sent myself to Mexico for a month thinking that, well, there's these like aerial circus classes happening that I can drop into for an hour a day, and that'll like get my movement, and the rest of the time I can have this cute cabana to sit under and write.
So I'm guessing you were at the aerial circus more than an hour a day?
Well, after the first day.
After the first day.
And I saw what they were doing, I went to the lead teacher and I was like, what would it take to not be a digital nomad, but actually be an aerial circus resident? And she was like, do you have any aerial circus background? And I was like, no.
I was in gymnastics. I've got years in gymnastics.
No,
Does that count?
No, none. But I don't want to sit here on my computer and sweat because, you know, it's 90 degrees and 100% humidity. And I'm just dripping sweat on the computer. And really right now in my life, what I need is like joy and laughter and play. And to get off of the computer and the production. And she said, you have to prove that you can hang.
Okay.
You got to be able to physically stay with their 8 hours a day of training.
Yeah.
And you have to show me that you don't care that you're going to be the low man on the totem pole. Because these were mostly females in their early 20s wanting to make a go at a professional aerial career. So they were there to put together an act that could be filmed. They had headshots, and there was like a big circus performance at the end of it all that everybody had to be part of, that they could put together as a package to promote themselves as an aerial performer, which is not what I am. And I was like, yeah, I don't care. I don't care. I got no ego in this.
I'm ready
I
to
just
go.
want to play. And so that's what I did for the month. I learned the aerial silks. I was part of the end performance. I had to put together an act, solo act, and be part of their whole, circus school. But all that to say, at that moment in time, I did kind of make that decision that there's more in me that needs to happen instead of just always like producing and doing that thing of driving all the time.
So I usually don't go to the fair, so I might have already missed this, but are we going to have Marnie doing an aerial circus presentation at the fair anytime soon? Is this going to happen now that you have this training? Or is that just a personal thing that was just benefiting you?
Yeah. I mean, right now, honestly, that was the easiest part of like saying I don't care that I'm the low man on the totem pole because I have nothing to lose. Like this performance, if I fall on my face or if I get laughed at because I'm not any good, like it doesn't matter to me, especially in Mexico. I don't know anybody. They're never going to see me again, whatever. I came home and, you know, I bought silks. I have them hanging in the lodge. I practice fairly regularly. I have a teacher that I still meet with online. Yeah. I love it. I don't know.
Well, I think for me, it's cool that you went somewhere with a goal in mind and you came out with
something totally different
that you're still practicing. You had it sounds like a very joyous, fun experience learning it. And so I think just that's a skill set or something that a lot of people have mentioned that I should probably embrace a little bit more about trying to just kind of to play. But play it's difficult. But I admire that you went down there for one thing and came back with something totally different. I think that's awesome.
And I don't know if it'll ever be.
Doesn't have to. I'm just joking with you.
Yeah.
If it is, great.
Yeah.
But if that's something that's just for you and your relaxation and it brings you joy and you love doing it on your own, that's perfect. You don't have to share everything with everybody else. You can keep stuff to yourself.
Thanks.
Not that you need my permission, but
no, it's nice. Yeah, it's nice to have that validation. I did go to a writing workshop last year, and one of the things that they had us do was write your life story in 3 sentences.
Okay.
Which is pretty fun.
Yeah.
When you really think about it. Like, it takes a while, but I don't have to share the whole thing, but 2 of the sentences, which make sense with what we have been discussing, is that I grew up fast and I'm learning to be a child slow.
Oh, I like that. I think my childhood got interrupted. And yeah, different things happen in life, and your life changes quickly.
Yeah.
And what you thought was real isn't real anymore. And so I think I'm still trying to adjust to that.
Yeah. And you can at any time.
And I probably will be adjusting to that for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Along with other things you never know what's going to happen tomorrow, but we're always adjusting to something.
Yeah, and it's never too late to be a child.
Never too late. And it's the cool thing about having a grandniece and a grandnephew in town is it's really easy to be a child and be playful with little kids.
Yeah.
And
especially when you don't have to be their parent.
Especially when you don't have to be their parent. And yeah, it's amazing how much joy that brings, or the childish behavior that you can get away with when you're with a kid. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I'm very thankful that they're here and I get to spend time with them and be fun and goofy.
Yeah.
It's
glad you're getting that experience.
Pretty cool. So moving forward now onto more kind of a sadder topic. Your Death Café. So what brought that about? And explain what it is too.
Well, I'll tell the bigger story if that's okay.
Yes.
The same year that I was in California that I met the Compassionate Project, I was there with the primary intention of spending time with not one of my longest childhood friend. So because we moved around a lot, I don't have a lot of those, like, I've known you since I was X.
Yeah.
But Aaron Norris, I met when I was 8 years old. He was my first friend in California when we landed there, and we always stayed connected. Even if it was, 6 months or a year without contact. Post high school, we stayed involved in each other's lives in somehow way or another. And in 2021, he was diagnosed with a very rare form of cancer, primary angiosarcoma. So he had a tumor the size of an egg in his heart, and they didn't know what it was. It's so rare that most of the time cancer doesn't start in the heart. And
that's the first time I'm not real knowledgeable about cancer, but that's the first time I've ever heard of anything like that. And the size of an egg.
An egg.
Your heart's not that big to begin with. That is crazy.
Yeah, and so, he was going to the doctor with chest pains and shortness of breath, and, it's still pandemic time. And he was having some other, situational social stresses in his life, and the doctors kept just saying, you have anxiety, you need to go home and take care of your stress. And finally, thankfully, somebody listened when he was like, yes, I have stress in my life, and I know stress, and this is different. And they finally did a chest x-ray, and they found this tumor, and within 24 hours had him in open heart surgery. So they removed the tumor and found out that it was cancerous. And in hindsight, he may have had a little better prognosis if they hadn't have removed the tumor, but they didn't know. I think of it like this is just my way of creating a vision. When you grow a broccoli and you cut off the initial broccoli flower, all these other little florets come out. But they don't come out until you cut off that big mother. And so that's the vision that has come to me in my time with him, was like they removed that tumor, and within a month he had mets all over his whole body.
Oh, wow.
Brain, lungs, bones. And so he spent a year and a half, going down the chemotherapy, treatment, everything path, and invited me into his journey. So we met every week on Zoom, And I was just a place for him to process whatever was coming up during this time, emotionally, psychologically, socially. And, I used my physical therapy and yoga training to help him process that, embody it, learn how to be in his body while his body was betraying him in this way. And he was a Broadway star, an off-Broadway star. So he was a dancer, he was an acrobatic, he was a singer. So like to have his body not there for him and to not be able to like feel like he could be in that place was a huge transition. He was a gay man raised in a conservative Christian home. He'd gone through, counseling to get the gay out of him. He had lots and lots of things to come to terms with in his life. And I just became a place to air it, all of it. And he invited me down to Santa Monica when he was put on a ventilator, with the, invitation of, I don't know how long this can last. The doctors were still telling him they could try more experimental treatments. His life partner wanted that, and he didn't. And whether he knew it at the time, I have no idea, but what ended up transpiring with our time together while I was there with him at UCLA Medical Center was helping him navigate the conversation that he wanted to come off of the ventilator, which meant that, his life would not continue for long. So through that whole 1.5 year process, from beginning to just having the diagnosis and coming all the way to the I'm ready, I've come to terms that my body's done, and I have made a lot of peace in my life, and I have told the people that I want to know that I love them and that they're important to me. I've said it, and I've told the people who didn't treat me well that they don't get to be part of my life anymore. I've said it, and I'm ready. I'm ready. That role that I played, that I got to share with another friend, and she told me, well, you were his death doula.
His death what?
Death doula.
Doula? Okay.
Which I didn't know was a thing. It's a thing. Like a birth doula.
Yeah.
Somebody who helps, a mother navigate bringing a child into the world.
I've never heard of that.
So a death doula helps an individual navigate the end of their life.
Okay.
Not from the medical hospice world care, but from the psychosocial, emotional, spiritual, like, what do I want the end of my life to look like? And, when I have control over the things that I have control over, how do I want that to be? And so that put me on a whole other path of training and education. So I went through a death doula certification through a place in Asheville, North Carolina, called the Center for Conscious Living and Dying, and did bedside training there with, they have it's a beautiful center that people come to consciously process and go through the last few months of their life when they know that that's where they are. So it's not, hospice workers are part of it, but it's not necessarily part of the hospice system. So that brought into my, I guess, teachings, my time of teaching, of knowing that, like, wow, we as a culture, we don't talk about death and dying. We often deny that it's part of living. I noticed myself feeling really interestingly defensive when people were trying to console me from the loss of Aaron. That, like, oh, he was so young, it's not fair. I was like, don't cheapen his life like that. He died at 45 years old. He lived a full circle of life from birth to death, and he was ready. It's a tragedy for me because I no longer get to hear his laughter or look in his eyes, but it's not tragic for him. And I wanted to ask that question bigger to all of us on why do we wait for that clarity? You know, now that I've been in this world for a little bit longer, and my exposure is still small compared to many who work as death doulas professionally all the time, but there is this beauty that comes, this clarity when you know that death is imminent. We aren't bullies to ourselves anymore. We don't allow people to perpetrate our emotions the way that we do when we think that we have to continue. And the reality is death is our birthright. It is the one known factor.
One known factor for all of us.
Absolutely. Yep. And so why do we wait to have a diagnosis or to have something that's telling us we're at these end stages to gain that true clarity of what is the life legacy that I want? If we can start to pull down that path now, then we live that legacy. We have that opportunity to be more present in that place. So the Death Café is this international movement. I didn't make it up. I wasn't the one who brought it to Haynes. Ellen Larson was the first one who brought it to Haynes.
Okay.
But I put it together last fall, in conjunction to, I did a weekend-long workshop with a death doula that I met at the writing workshop that I was talking about, that I had to write my whole life in 3 sentences. This man, Darnell, was one of the facilitators. He's a children's television show author and just a super cool human, and also happens to be a death doula. That was not at all our topic of the writing seminar, but he and I connected on that subject. And then we were like, wouldn't it be super cool to do a writing workshop with yoga and movement and embodiment and breath in Haines, Alaska? And so he came. He came and we put on this workshop. And then we also did this kind of, I think it was a little larger, more promoted in different circles than what had kind of been the other death cafes that we've done. But the whole idea of the Death Café is to sit down over cake and tea, and the conversation is focused around death and dying, whatever that means. What questions do you have? You know, what do you want to say? And what do you want to have heard? And it's really a cool experience, and hopefully we're going to have more. In fact, it's kind of brought in this whole other conversation with some other friends of like, I feel a little bit driven. Now I'm going to put it out there that I think we should have conversation cafes where we talk about things like, what was a pivotal point in your childhood that changed your direction? You know, we put these things out here. Yeah, exactly. Right. Actually, my friend Ben says in Haynes, you can have a lot of acquaintances for a long period of time. And we might call them friends, but are they really friends? Do we really know, like, what makes their heart beat? What gets them out of bed in the morning? What their struggles are? When they need us to show up for them? We know their name and who they are at the post office. But, like, how many people do we actually know? And, like, walking away from something like the Death Café, you probably know people deeper than you've known them in all of the times that you've, sat across from them over bingo, or not that those activities aren't good, they're good, but sometimes when we know everybody's name, it stops us from actually asking a whole lot more. And so that, I think, is the foundation of this, for me, this dream of maybe bringing in this conversation cafe is like just throwing topics on a table of like opening to things that we don't always want to talk about, maybe just because we haven't been asked.
Well, that's kind of as you were talking about that, it's kind of an offshoot because I had Gershon Cohen on here earlier, and one of the things him and I had talked about was so many of us that live in Haynes probably 90% of the things that we all want are the same. Yeah, you want a safe environment. You want the roads to be plowed. You want a good school for your kids. You want some economic opportunity. But when you get into defining what is a good school, how soon do the roads get plowed? How do the roads get, when you get into the details and how to do it, that's where we all start arguing. We generally want most of the same things. It's just the definition of it and the means is where we come into conflict. And I think that what you're talking about, these conversation cafe, could alleviate some of that just by getting to know people on a deeper level, what some of their struggles are. And again, that's kind of why I started this, is just let's get to know people in the community. Hopefully people clue in, and I'm learning stuff about you that I've known you 20 years, and I'm learning stuff today. Just pretty much everybody I've had on here, a lot of them I've known for a really long time. Every person I've learned something new.
Yeah, that's cool.
And so just having those conversations with somebody that, other than yoga and stuff like that, that you and I generally don't hang out in the same circles. You know, if I need physical therapy, I'll get in touch with Marnie. I see you at the store, I see you around town, we say hi, and you know, I consider you somebody that, as you were saying before, I don't really have people that I would consider close friends. I do have a lot of acquaintances, and I think you're probably closer to the friend than acquaintance than a lot of people, just because of the way, not because we do so many things together, but just the way that you've helped me and guided me through difficult parts of life. And so that those people get higher status, if you will. But yeah, we do need to spend more time talking to others outside of our own little tight family circles or whatever it is. And that's one of the things I feel I've been really blessed with, is growing up in a retail environment, that I get to meet so many different people from different areas. And there's times that I'm like, man, I do not want to have the same conversation with these people that I've had. But the last couple of years, I've started asking, when people come in off a cruise ship or they're coming in off their motorhome, where are you from? What do you do? What's the best part of your trip? And just start engaging. And you can see a person's mood a lot of times shift when it's not like, hey, is there anything I can help you? But you start asking about their life and what they're doing. Tell me about you. And it's none of it's deep conversations, but man, there's sometimes somebody will be here for an hour and just talking about life in Nebraska or whatever, and about how they're growing corn or whatever it is that they do in their life. And I love all those conversations now. I love learning from other people about what makes them tick, what brought them to Alaska, whatever it is. Yeah. It's fun. And you don't have to agree with everybody to have those conversations.
Hopefully we don't.
Hopefully don't.
That's boring.
Yeah, it's really boring. But it's and I found too that getting to know somebody's life story makes it easier for me to understand when we disagree. Because the things that they've been through, the experiences they've had, it's like, okay, yeah, I know why we diverge on that, because this happened in my lifetime that really pushed me in this direction. I can see where that happened in their life, put them in a different direction.
Yeah, we see it from our own lens.
We see it from our own lens.
And sometimes we have to understand the lens that somebody else has in front of them for us to be able to, and that means we have to step back and create some space, from our own way of looking at things. But I mean, I think that's one of the things, this intrigue and awareness and openness around death, is that death is our great equalizer. We're all going to experience it, and all of us sitting together have not yet experienced it.
Correct.
So we can talk about it. Some of us maybe have even had near-death experiences that create some different awareness around it all, but otherwise we are all on the equal plane. We don't know exactly when or how, and it's a cool thing. I don't know if I'll agree with you on it's a cool thing. I'm still processing. You can. And so Yeah. You lost somebody really integral and important
Yep.
and intimate in your life. And
But I hope you do another one, because I learned a lot going through that, and I still have a lot of questions. There's still a lot that I would like to learn. So I hope I see a flyer up for another cafe.
you got it. And I don't mean to make light in it's a cool thing. I think it's a cool thing when we can recognize that every single one of us, regardless of the lens, the background, the upbringing, have a place that we can meet with equality.
Agreed.
All of us will lose everything that we've ever loved.
Yep.
It's impermanence.
So on that upbeat note,
Yeah.
what else in the life of Marnie, or what you have going on in your life, have I missed asking you about?
We've been talking for a while.
We have been talking for a while. What are you working on now? What excites you going forward? Do you have any big plans coming up on new projects, or?
I mean, this winter I've been leaning. Aaron's still with me every day, and a lot of the things that we experienced together in that year and a half have continued to encourage me to walk through the world differently. Saying yes to an aerial circus residency instead of having to write another book.
Yeah.
He always encouraged people to say yes to strange things and to take risks and be courageous and creative. And so this winter, I have leaned further into the kind of creativity mindset. I've been doing a journaling project. There's a book called The Book of Alchemy by Saluka. I always mispronounce her last name. She's an incredible author. She wrote the book Between Two Kingdoms. But the Book of Alchemy is a 100-day project of you read an essay and then there's a little journal prompt after it. And so it's just been a really great morning anchor for me that I wake up in the morning, make my hot drink, roll out the yoga mat, spend my 20 minutes saying hello to my body and my breath, and then I sit down with this essay that I read, and then a prompt, and I write, and then I move on with the day.
Okay.
So that's been a really great way to just have a winter anchor. Today was day 60. And really what I didn't go into it with this expectation of like creativity is going to be the thing, but it's been one of the things that has really come out for me. So I said yes to a workshop through the Haynes Arts Council that'll come out in March, which is a really different movement. It's going to be a movement and journaling workshop.
Okay.
And not yoga and not weight training, but just creative movement. I'm not going to give away too much. Hopefully people will be brave and show up and know that I too am teaching something new and different for me. And that there's nothing to lose, right? We're not doing a performance. Nobody's judging you. It's a way to open into your body and, kind of create a monologue and process and move things through and then reflect on a page. So that's there. I have another somewhat in the death awareness world workshop coming to Haynes in September, the first weekend in September. My very dear friend Aditi Sethi, who I first met here in Haines, Alaska as a medical intern. She was a medical intern at the Search Clinic.
Yeah.
She had been a kayak guide in the early 2000s for Ned Risbicki, gone on to medical school, but always loved Haynes. So came back and did one of her rotations with Dr. Julia Haynes as her clinical instructor. I met her there. We connected. Fast forward, she is the founder of the Center for Conscious Living and Dying. She's done 15 years now of palliative care. She's a hospice doc. And she had a similar, very shape-shifting moment with one particular patient that turned into a movie called The Last Ecstatic Days that's available on PBS if you want to look at it. This man, Ethan Sether, really changed her I shouldn't say changed it. It gave her the spark to create something new in that death and dying world and how people are supported at the end of their life. So she founded the Center for Conscious Living and Dying. She's the one who's told me, you were Aaron's death doula.
Okay.
And she's going to come back
She's
here.
Gonna come here?
She's going to come here, and we're doing a workshop called Presencing.
Okay.
And so it's, there is that, like, having an awareness of our mortality helps us to be present in our life. But what else does? Singing, rituals, fire, breath, yoga, journaling, talking. So it's going to be a really beautiful weekend of participating in activities that help us to come back again and again to the act of being present. So presencing's kind of we sort of did the same thing of, like, we created a verb, right, out of the act of being present. Yeah. So that's out and about. Anybody who wants to sign up, happy to have you. And I'm really excited about that. I'm also teaching for yoga medicine coming up in February. Yoga medicine is this big international organization founded by my first true yoga teacher, who I did my yoga teacher training through, Tiffany Cruikshank. And she, every other year, she does what she calls the Yoga Medicine Innovation Conference. So she reaches out to some of her teachers, and thankfully she's reached to me each time. And I've taught on pain science in the past. I've taught on like interoception, of how we interpret our body's perceptions in the world, and how we use that in athletics and performance. And now this time I'm doing it on death. Because that's where my mind place is right now. But it's similar to the Pain Science Yoga Life of, can we use the container of yoga, which is about the study of self, right? Can we use that to also help us open into this awareness of our immortality? And can that help us to be more clear in how we want to live our life now? So that's coming up in February online. You can go to the Yoga Medicine website, which is just Yoga Medicine online, and sign up for that if you want. Those are the things that are, like, immediately in my wheelhouse. And hopefully just more play and adventures in the wild. Yeah, that's what's happening in my life right now.
Dang, got a lot going on.
And you know what? I do a lot less now because I am learning to be a child slow. I am slowing down. I am committing myself less. I'm making a lot more space for just being instead of doing.
I need to, hopefully some of that's rubbed off on me.
It's a practice.
It's something I don't spend a lot of time practicing. Maybe someday.
Bring it to your yoga mat.
Yeah, true. Well, that all encompass, I appreciate you sharing your story. Because I think I could start at the beginning. Just so much of your life in Haynes, as I've known it, has always been about, how do we help others? How do we reach out? How do we include others? And just the compassion, the care through everything you do. I'm really glad. I don't know if it was the beer. I don't know if it was the weather when you guys first came up here, Greg. However it was that brought you to the community, I think Haynes has been extremely fortunate and blessed that you decided to come up here 21 years ago, and that you've stayed all this time here. And thank you for sharing all of your experiences with us today. Thank you for having me. And the third line of my Tell Your Life story in 3 lines was, I was born in a foreign land, and I found home where the mountains meet the sea. Haynes is definitely my heart home. It's the home that I never knew I was looking for until it was in front of me. So I appreciate the gratitude that you share, and I have so much gratitude for this land, for the people of this land, for the community of Haynes, for holding me in my times of tenderness and struggle, and for buoying me when I'm like, we're going to change the way pain is talked about in this community. Or whatever other crazy thing I've brought forward from all the Well and Fit community challenges that we used to do. And so, yeah, the gratitude is a bidirectional in this
in this place for me.
Well, getting to that, I think that when people were able to see from early on with the things that you were starting, I think they were able to see that the care and the love you had for people, and that when those manifested through the classes and through the different things you're pushing, each one, it was like, oh, Marnie's doing that. Oh, I should take a look at that. I think you've built up that, I don't know the right word for it, but that reservoir of trust and acceptance from early on with the things that you were doing, that I don't think I'm the only one that appreciates having you and Haynes.
Thanks, Doug.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your questions.
Thanks for watching this episode of Doug Has Questions. Just a reminder, if you've enjoyed the conversation today, please like, subscribe, and we're available on YouTube if you want to watch us. If you just want to listen, it's on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and you have new episodes being launched every Thursday. So thanks again for watching or listening and following us. We appreciate your support.